Hello and welcome to episode 43 of Michelin Tree's Ford Falcon 351 Crusty Wagon Project. Now, as the time stands right now, we're somewhere between getting my alternators fixed and getting my seat installed. But this is weeks in advance of when this video is going to post because I need to establish whether I have a brake booster that works or not. And from some preliminary investigations suggest that getting the brake booster repaired is actually going to be quite expensive. So what I thought I would do before I committed to that was replace the check valve that goes into the booster and then connects to my inlet manifold, because the check valve that I used was literally raided from one of my parts bins of old BMW parts, and I have no idea if that's actually a check valve or even if it's a check valve that works. So I bought one on eBay for $26 and it's turned up. So tonight the task is to put that check valve in, start the car up, see if I have the booster feel to the brakes as the booster picks up and the pedal goes down. And if I get none of that, well, that booster has to come out and I'm going to run it to the local brake and clutch mob tomorrow morning, and then hopefully by the time it's repaired I can post this video and it'll all be on time, which is only 3 weeks from now. So I'm going to get stuck into opening my goodies, because this is basically going to be the start of my brake finishing off video. The left rear wheel cylinder started leaking shortly after I put my U-Butte new wheels on the car, so I took note of that and thought to myself, I have to get some new wheel cylinders. Probably one, but what the hell, I'll put both of them on so they're both new. So I have wheel cylinders here, and I have a box here which should have a check valve in it, and the check valve will go into the booster, hopefully solve my brake boosting problem so I don't have to pull the booster out and spend hundreds of dollars getting it repaired. But I won't be holding my breath because the car has sat around for a very long time, and judging by the plethora of options on eBay for brake booster reconditioning and exchanges, it's big business. So I don't think I'm going to get out of this scot-free, but $26 investment to find out if it's just the check valve is worth taking a punt. Down here is the check valve that I initially scrounged up, and here is the new check valve which will go in its place. Now this should be pretty straightforward, so I'm going to have at it off camera so we can move straight to starting the car up to see if I have booster, because that's going to make this video a lot more straightforward for me and a lot cheaper. I'll get straight into bleeding the brakes and doing the wheel cylinders tomorrow morning. But if the brake booster is stuffed, I'll probably be painting the bonnet instead. Okay, the old check valve is off. It appears to be working. But the grommet that goes into the booster is buggered, so I'll put the new grommet in and the new check valve in and we'll see what happens. After a greater than anticipated effort to get that check valve in, it's time to do the startup and see if I get pedal. That's made no difference whatsoever. Nope. Well, that's annoying. That means the booster's coming out, and if I'm going to be effective with my use of time, the booster has to come out tonight so I can drop the booster off in the morning before I have to do all my other family related things for the weekend. Well, the brake booster is out. and I've just got off the phone with Slacks Creek Brake and Clutch, and apparently it's $265, including GST, to get this reconditioned. So that's alright, and it takes a couple of days turnaround, so I'll get this into the shop this morning. So it's the end of the weekend that I reinstalled the bonnet onto my car. You can see it over there in the background, and the whole time I've had my brake booster tucked away in the back of my wagon because I don't want to get any overspray or grunge on my freshly reconditioned PBR brake booster. As you can see here, look at that, fully reconditioned. So what I have here is my fully rebuilt PBR XC Ford Falcon brake booster. Now, I was quoted $265 from the Slacks Creek Brake and Clutch last week, and I dropped it in on Saturday morning, and they said it'll be a 2-day turnaround, and sure enough, they were calling me Wednesday morning and saying, hey, it's ready for you to pick up when you're ready. And I said, I'll probably be able to pick that up on Saturday. So I grabbed it, I brought it home, I tucked it into the back of the car while I finished the bonnet, and now it's time to bung this back in the car because I need to fix the brakes on this car. I need to fix the brakes before the end of next weekend so I can tell you guys about it and hopefully test the brakes out. So that's where we're at with that. Going to shove this booster back in. Shouldn't be that difficult, right? I mean, I've got the master cylinder detached, and all I need to do is pop this booster back in via the pattern on the firewall, and I'm pretty sure that goes like that. So it came in $1 cheaper than I was quoted, which was great. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I had checked on eBay, and eBay refurbishers were saying $800 exchange, $650 exchange. Obviously they want your old one in exchange for their reconditioned one. And that was outrageous. Not that I had any reference point, I was just reluctant to spend that kind of money on one thing when I have so much other stuff to do. My 50%, or rather my 50% over budget target is rapidly closing in, and I've got less than $1,000 to go before I hit that target again, so I need to be more thoughtful about the last few things I need for this car. And I haven't even addressed all the tailgate related stuff I'm going to need to do, because the tailgate on this car is a bit of a mess, but we'll cover that probably after the walk around video. You have one of those evenings where you only have to do a simple thing, and that is to reinstall your brake booster. But in order to get the brake booster out of the engine bay without taking one of the hinges off, you have to disconnect your master cylinder. Now, this port down here for the front right brake caliper has always, well, it was quite stiff when I put it in initially, and tonight was no exception, and I cross-threaded it thinking that it's going in, and I got the fitting halfway in before I figured out I'd actually cross-threaded it pretty badly. So I had to pull the master cylinder out, re-tap the thread, what was left of it, to try and salvage it, and then install the master cylinder with this port first, so it didn't get on any janky angles to affect its ability to go in, and it appears to have gone in. I look like I've salvaged it. But for the record, PBR brake master cylinders are much more user friendly than this Ultima one that I got off eBay. I'm pretty sure I put a PBR one in the sedan and the threads didn't gall up at all, whereas this one, that port there, that thread has always galled up on me, which makes you think you've cross-threaded it. But as it turned out, I did cross-thread it tonight, and fortunately I've managed to salvage it. So all I need to do now is put on the two brake slave cylinders for the rear drums and bleed the brakes up, and I should theoretically have booster. But I've done enough tonight because it's almost 10 and I'd like to go to bed. So it's the first day of the long weekend, and I've already done the slave cylinder for the right hand rear drum brake assembly, so I've got an idea of what I'm doing now. So it's time to move on to the left drum brake assembly at the rear. I've also taken the opportunity to roll the guards because I don't want my hectic BF Goodrich TR radials getting cut up by an unrolled wheel arch, much the way that my other car did to my other tyres. When I finally got on the road, discovered that my wheel and tyre combination was just a little bit too hectic. So I've rolled these guards much the same way as I rolled them in the sedan, so hopefully there won't be a problem. So let's move on to the passenger side where the cylinder's actually leaking, and that one actually needs to be done. This is just preventative maintenance on this side. As you can see, it's a gross mess because this cylinder's been leaking pretty badly. So what I'm going to do is pull it all apart, probably give those brake shoes a bit of a spray with some brake clean, put it all back together again. And again, hectic rolled arch, nice and flat, unmindful of any future consequences of rolling that flat. That's not what this car is about. This car is about maximising the opportunity to enjoy the car. So let's get stuck into it. So that's the wheel cylinder in. All you need is a 10mm socket and a 10mm pipe spanner to get that wheel cylinder off and put it back on again. It's all pretty straightforward. As with any drum brake assembly, the real challenge is getting everything reassembled with the springs and getting it all to go back together again without flying apart in your hands. So I'll just clean these pieces up and I'll put it all back together again. And I'm back from the laundry, cleaning my drum brakes. Time to put it all back together again. So after some off-camera swearing and then regathering myself, I figured it out and got it all back together again, as best as I can tell. So I'm going to put the drum back on, then it's time to bleed the brakes, put the wheels back on. Bled now, and pedal feels nice and firm, so what I need to do now is get the wheels back on and get this car off the axle stands and see if the car moves and stops. First things first, wheels on. Start up tomorrow. So I'm typically a fan of a good shortcut to save myself $1, and this project is no exception. And unfortunately, after going to the trouble of putting new wheel cylinders into my rear end yesterday, I took the drum off this morning because I could see a bit of fluid seeping out, and I thought to myself, I'll just tidy that up to make sure those cylinders aren't leaking, and they're not. But one of the shoes in my rear drum that got soaked in brake fluid has fallen apart. So all the effort I went to yesterday to reinstall these used brake shoes has come to naught. But all is not lost, because I've picked up a new set of brake shoes from Slacks Creek Brake and Clutch this morning for $49.50. So I'm going to put them into the car, the whole set, and repeat everything I did yesterday, but with new shoes this time. But you won't need to see any of that. The next thing you'll be seeing is me taking this car off the stands, because that's the next step in all of this. Car is on the ground. Time to back it out into the yard. Brake booster works. Okay, so the car has left the shed, and the initial takeaway is I can see one coolant leak from here and power steering leak. Now that is probably from the power steering box this time, so that'll be something I need to address next, I guess. I'll give the car a wash and then do a walk around, which you're not going to see until next week. But for the time being, I'll wash the car. and worry about power steering leaks another time. Summary time for episode 43's brake booster and general brake overhaul wrap-up. The car is off the axle stands, it's moved on its own steam for the first time since April, and the brakes do indeed work with the brake booster boosting as it should. So, not out of the woods yet. Backing the car into the driveway has uncovered another power steering leak, which I suspect is probably the power steering box, because that's where it's coming from. Never mind. The takeaway from this episode is it now runs, drives, stops, starts, and I gotta say, I approve of the ride height too. We look at the front suspension here, and the gap above the back, or the gap above the front wheel, isn't as bad as I thought it would be. I was kind of concerned that it would be a little bit higher than that, and I was prepared for disappointment. The back is pretty sacked because the springs are sagging and it's full of stuff, but I'm pretty happy with that too. I like. Stay tuned next week for the walk around video, which I haven't filmed yet because I've literally only just cleaned the car today and the light's fading, so I'll get onto the walk around video probably tomorrow and you'll see it next week. So till then, be gone.